Las Vegas will bring us our first look at a new 2025 philosophy, and the team bringing it will be the Ferrari team, which will test this in their free practice session. As the season comes to an end, teams will try and test and really experiment before we get into that winter break to get the best possible correlation from wind tunnel to track. But why is this test so important specifically for Ferrari? And these new parts coming will actually help them in this last triple header to try and fight for championship aspirations, because it's not just a test, they're also getting an upgrade to a very important aerodynamic piece. Right before I get into, I wanted to thank you guys for the support. We're so close to 66,000, which is just incredible. Thank you all for being around. Thank you for giving me a chance. If you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe. It would mean the world to me. But let's get started on this Ferrari video. Project 677, or the SF25, depends on what type of name they're going to give their 2025 car. Ferrari is very unique when it comes to naming the car right before the season, but there's always project names. We're actually getting some testing parts here in the Las Vegas GP due to F1 Uno being our source, who has a very good and reputable reputation over there at Ferrari. They always have the insight on what the team could possibly bring to the GP and when these new parts are arriving. And there were always little bits and pieces that were supposed to arrive, but Ferrari has been able to allocate some of its in-season budget to actually test what should be for the 2025 car and whether they want a different philosophy and are they going in the right direction. Now, the philosophy is obviously made up in the floor, so we will see a new floor here. This floor will play an integral part on whether the team is taking a step in the direction they need to, because there's only one real thing that Ferrari car lacks, and that is high-speed cornering. They're not able to find that perfect amount of downforce to be able to go through high-speed corners very well, like the Red Bull or the McLaren, but its strengths lie in different spots. In slow-speed corners, it's been extremely strong even in 22, 23, and 24. Medium speed has been pretty strong, but their actual straight line speed has always been very good, and that was something they actually adopted from the 23 car. But all cars have the exact same problem, which is that high speed cornering. And sure, you can say the 2022 car wasn't too bad in the high speed, but it's because the car had a lot of drag. As soon as they took off that drag, they ended up losing that high speed cornering. And they've tried to combat this high speed being an issue throughout the whole season. At the beginning of the season, they were very strong on their tires, but they were very cold, so it took a lot of time to warm up. Still, they had the strengths of slow speed, medium speed, and a very non-draggy car, to say the least. Then a big update came in Spain. In Spain, the car ended up actually porpoising through the high-speed corners. It did give them a little bit of pace when they were able to actually get the car in a great position, but do you really want porpoising? And the balance is the most important part on the car. They actually run their floor pretty low, but not as low as a team like Mercedes and Aston Martin, so they're able to find a lot of different setups, and they don't struggle of going into that window that Aston and Mercedes are just struggling in so much with these seasons. So the team is just missing that little bit to find what they need in the high-speed corners, and actually bringing along with this 2025 philosophy that they're trying to test out here in Las Vegas, there will be a new lightweight front wing, which will be an iteration of the Monza front wing, much lighter in weight to help out with this low drag track. And the front wing they're using from Singapore onwards, and which actually ended up having a flexi update in Austin, is also part of their 2025 design. So that testing floor that they're going to be using in Las Vegas will be tested on this new lightweight wing, but it's possible we actually end up seeing it in Qatar as well to see if it finally ends up doing what it needs to, because Qatar could be a tough track for Ferrari. And with that as well, Formula Uno has given us so much data on what else we can also be seeing, because there's many iterations of this Ferrari and what could possibly be seen here at Las Vegas. They did have a front wing that was a little bit less draggy in Spa, but the iteration we're going to see is a Monza spinoff, and the rear wing setup will be dependent on whether it's better to have the Spa rear wing or the Monza one. And when you look at the Spa rear wing, it's got that middle cutout, one of the only Ferrari wings that actually has that middle cutout. And yes, it's low drag, but it's not as low as possible. Monza gives you that pretty much straight up low drag setup that a lot of teams are going to look for in Vegas. They ended up actually using their Monza rear wing in the race. They did test in the practice, just like they're going to do this year in 2023. One iteration that was from Baku and the other one was from Monza. They ended up sticking with the Monza iteration. They have been talking about a possible weakness here in Vegas, And whether that floor is going to help or not, we'll have to end up seeing. And while I don't believe this is a big problem, even Charles Leclerc himself has stated that it's not that big of an issue. He still expects the team to be super strong in Vegas. It is the tire times, because they actually have the opposite problem they had in 2023. The car takes a pretty long time to put its tires in range, and we found out actually through these seasons that it is a aerodynamic problem. It was thought for a long time that this problem actually lied in the suspension, and that Red Bull was able to warm up their tires so much quicker because of actually having that pull rod in the rear part of its car. But Ferrari has actually had a great car on its tire management. McLaren as well, they're both polar opposites. And the suspension doesn't matter as much as the aerodynamic pieces, so they're probably trying to find a solution as well into the floor to have that perfect range of tire temperature, because the McLaren has been by far the best when it comes to having a great amount of pace, but also warming up those tires quickly. It's why they're quick in both qualifying and the race. So with them trying to combat these problems, having these tests for 2025 and seeing if the philosophy needs to change and in which direction they need to go for 25, will they actually be able to take P1 and go for that championship? Because Fred Vasseur surely thinks so. Like I said, these last parts going along with this front wing that is new and lightweight, it will help them in Vegas, but it will not be used in Qatar or Abu Dhabi. They already have a good front wing there, and Qatar could be an issue, but Abu Dhabi is probably looking to be another Ferrari track. Any track that has those traction zones where Ferrari is able to pick up on its throttle much quicker than the other cars, that is where it typically gains its advantage. So there are two tracks where it can be much better than McLaren, and with it being down 36 points as of currently speaking on McLaren, it's very possible, if they won two in Vegas, that this gap can change with the snap of fingers. Now, while it is unlikely, they just have to be pretty close to McLaren in Qatar. That probably will be a very heavily dominated track by them. In Abu Dhabi would have to be another Ferrari domination, but it's gonna go down to the wire if everything goes to plan on both the Ferrari car and the McLaren car, because they have their strong suits and their weak spots. But 2 out of the 3 tracks should be Ferrari tracks if we're going off of the strengths and weaknesses of what is the current SF24. And with the little additions that they've been talking about, it's possible that this front wing could uplift them here in Vegas to really give them a solidified P1 and P2. I also said that in my predictions. And if the floor philosophy works properly, then maybe Qatar could be a much better GP for them depending on the setup they end up going with. It's all up in the air right now with Ferrari, but this is very interesting that they're bringing this in Vegas and testing it specifically here on both Carlos and Charles. It is going to be only one floor, but it will be divided between the 2 drivers. I think in FP1 it's probably going to be Leclerc, FP2 it's going to be Carlos, but at the end of the day, Leclerc is their driver, so they're probably going to listen to more of the input that Leclerc has. I guess they just want to see, depending on driving styles, and possibly looking into Lewis Hamilton, who has a more similar style to that of Carlos than Charles. But I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you guys think of this 2025 floor coming here to Vegas and I'm testing it? It's very cool that we got this. I love when we get little insights on what can be for these 2025 cars. I think it adds a lot of excitement and more anticipation for how big of a change we could see, because the floor philosophy is the most important part on the car. It's pretty much what makes up the baseline. If that isn't correct, then you can kiss your season goodnight. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.